My name is Seid. I'm founder of Cascadia Workshops, and I'm a coach, consultant, mentor to social entrepreneurs and people who are committed to making a positive difference in the world, who are also working on their own personal growth and development. This video is on social marketing. How do you reach people with very different viewpoints or very different worldviews with your message in a way that they can understand? So essentially, one of the drawbacks, probably the Achilles heel of the environmental movement for the last 40 years has been that we think that if we give people enough information, if we give people enough data, that will motivate them to change. So we bombard people with information about ocean acidification, or we bombard people with information about climate change, or we bombard people with information about racism, and we think that with more data, with more information, that'll motivate people to change. And actually, that's not what motivates people to change. What motivates people to change is that you have connected with what's already important to them, what's already part of their values, that they can be internally motivated to make a difference. So let me make this concrete and tell you about how green building became code in San Francisco County and Alameda County. Alameda has about 12 small cities, including Oakland and Berkeley. And this story is a story about social marketing, and I want to backtrack to a book called The Cultural Creatives by Paul Ray and Sherry Ruth Anderson. What Paul Ray discovered is that before World War II, there were two major subcultures in the United States of America, and he named them traditionals and moderns. So traditionals have a worldview of land rights, gun rights, woman's places in the home, what we would typically think of as traditional, conservative, maybe Republican values. The other major subculture in the United States before World War II, Paul Ray called the moderns. Now, the moderns really valued scientific rationality and economic growth. On a personal level, there was very much of an achievement orientation, and so these were the two major subcultures before World War II. Now, after World War II came, a third major subculture showed up on the scene, and he called them the cultural creatives, the postmoderns, or greens. These are the folks who brought us the environmental movement, the civil rights movement, the women's movement, and they showed up as a major cultural force after World War II. Now, here's the trouble. If I speak the language of one group, I'm going to turn off the other two groups. If I speak the language of these folks, I turn off the other two. So how do I speak to them? So enter David Johnston, whose website is What's Working, and you can look that up, .org or .com. And he managed to get green building to become code in San Francisco County, and Alameda County by creating three distinct marketing strategies, one for traditionals, one for moderns, and one for the postmoderns. If you're a student of Marshall Rosenberg's process Nonviolent Communication, for example, which focuses so much on universal human needs, what you notice when you use this lens while looking at the needs that show up for people is that you tend to see a general pattern. So for example, with traditionals, a lot of the needs that tend to show up have to do with stability and safety and security. Whereas for moderns, a lot of it has to do with acceptance in your peer group through high achievement, for example, scientific rationality, secular humanism. And for cultural creatives, a lot of the needs that tend to show up have to do with inclusion and making sure everybody's voice is heard and being sensitive toward others and caring about the planet, things like that. So this is what David Johnston did. For the traditionals, when talking about green building, he would say things like, well, you know that conventional insulation in your walls is soaked in formaldehyde, and you don't really want your children around that, do you? So again, emphasizing the safety side of green building. Whereas for the moderns, he would say, well, green building is going to save you so much money in your monthly maintenance bills because it's so much more energy efficient that you need to spend a lot less to heat it the same as other conventional building. So you're going to save a lot of money because that's what's important to this worldview. By the way, it's good for the planet. Like that was sort of like an afterthought. And it was only when there was a group that he trusted that kind of like the center of gravity of their consciousness was at the same level, Greens, the cultural creatives, the postmoderns, only when he was with a group of those folks would he really emphasize, look, green building reduces so much pressure from old growth forests. And the carbon emissions are so much fewer because it's so much more efficient. And so emphasizing all those pieces to the people who had a place for that to land. So here's the key to this. First of all, we don't listen to understand, we listen to respond. And I want to challenge you or invite you to start listening to understand instead of just listening to respond. It's not just about others seeing your point of view or thinking, well, my perspective is the only correct one. Instead, how do you phrase your point of view in a way that actually has a place to land with those other people? So saying things, reaching people where they already are, essentially. I made friends with a local retired logger. In years past, I would have said, to heck with this person, I don't want anything to do with them. And yet, I hung in there in the friendship, and I turned that relationship around to where this guy is now talking about sustainability with other loggers because of some conversations he and I had. Other loggers who can hear it from him who would never hear it from me, because nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And that's what I was able to do, is establish a relationship with this person with a very different worldview. And it was one thing I said about sustainability that really stuck with him, which was that sustainability is about preserving options for future generations. And this person from a traditional worldview with grandchildren could really connect with that. Preserving options for future generations. So you can take your message and connect with what are the people in your audience really wanting and what are they needing and what's their worldview, so that you can reach them where they're at instead of expecting them to see things your way. Thanks for watching. Please leave me comments, send me questions, and I'd love to engage in a dialogue. Thank you.